You
Yeah.
think people who are real dreamers and actual decision people are going to be heard at the cocktail party at Mar-a-Lago? Of course not. Of course not. Even Elon Musk couldn't make it. Even he couldn't survive DC. You know what I mean? Here's the richest
Yeah.
man in the world, with the biggest publishing platform of anybody, really. If he uses his X, he can make anybody be seen by hundreds of millions of people. So he's got the biggest publishing firm in some ways. Um, and even with all that power and money and influence and all the business successes that he's had, he wasn't able to survive the DC machine so far. I mean, they basically, as soon as I remember seeing that, as soon as they, I connected Ron Paul to Elon, and Elon was tweeting out Ron Paul 100 times before after the election and before the election too. And I thought, it was like a canary in a coal mine. If they didn't bring Ron Paul on to Doge, it was my way of knowing, okay, it's the same old business as usual. And
Yeah.
they didn't bring him on. So that was my way of realizing that Elon had pretty soon, if not himself, be a part of, but most likely ran into a wood chipper. And that wood chipper said, we're not bringing people like Ron Paul on here because we're not serious about real cuts like Ron Paul would be. So they, of course, they lived up to our expectations, which were sub-zero. And that's what he ran into. And so he starts to do these cuts, and I knew that everything was going to stop as soon as he got his cabinet in, because once he got the cabinet secretaries in, they were going to want to have their little fiefdom under their power, and they didn't want to have some Elon Musk running around saying, "Hey, under your," because it was always nice to say, look what this past administration was spending on this. But now when it becomes you're the secretary of that department, right? Now it's not the past administration, it's yours. And so it's a lot harder to disavow those things because you start to say, oh, that's nice. Let's keep this thing running. This is going to help, this or that. And then you get all these coercive ways of keeping people in line that probably are going on. But Elon ran into that, and that was lights out for any serious spending cuts. And I understand that if you go watch my interviews with Tom Luongo, that Trump's up to something with this tariff thing and this kind of trying to stave off this control of the city of London over America's financial system. That's a whole nother world that I am not as well versed in, but I think it's fascinating, and it's a different layer to what's going on that I think a lot of people are not aware of. So I hope that turns out, like Tom says, to be a success.